Introduction to the soft pastels. Now, there are actually two types of pastels that we're going to be using. There's the soft pastel, which is sort of a lighter, kind of really chalky. It kind of gets like super soft. I can kind of scrape it with my thumbnail really easily. And there's the hard pastels, which are a little bit more dense, and you can definitely tell that they're like kind of more like a traditional sort of piece of chalk. Okay, so the hard versus the soft. Now, for our purposes, we're going to get to use these brand new soft pastel kits, the 24 colors. So I haven't even broken into these yet, but I'm just going to use, for my demonstration, kind of some of my old kits. I went ahead and got these for us this year, so it's going to be exciting. We'll each kind of be able to have our own, since there's so few of us in the Art 2 classes. All right. I have some other tools. So I have some blending stumps, some blending sticks of various sizes in here, and I can get out some more. I've got a couple of erasers. I've got some sandpaper, and the sandpaper is not to necessarily sharpen these, but to clean them off. Because as we use them and we blend the pastels, a lot like we blend charcoal, it gets stuff on there, and that's going to get on our paper, and we don't want that. So I can just kind of drag it and kind of turn it. And I can get it nice and clean. But you want to make sure to do it at an angle so we keep that point. So that's pretty cleaned off. Okay, what you don't want to do with the sandpaper, like this student here, don't try to clean off the pastels. If you want to clean off the pastels, you can actually take one of the paper towels, these kind, not my brown ones, and you can just kind of wipe it off a little bit to clean that off. But really, you only kind of need to clean sort of the tip there. Okay, so the pastel is a great sort of introduction to painting, because we can use these like we would paint. And so when I talk about paint, we talk about sort of mixing colors, but also sort of after that, there's kind of like the rule of 3, where I talk about dark, medium, and light values sort of in this same color range. So if I have a thing that's green, if I just do, just one kind of green, and then maybe I blend it, or I blend it with my finger a little bit. Okay, like I can do some kind of cool faded stuff with it on this paper here, or I can use a piece of paper towel there to kind of fuzz it out. Okay, now if you do that to all of it, just like with charcoal, it'll lighten the whole thing up, and you'll lose some of the value. But if I do that, it's just sort of one color, and it's not going to be very noticeable. But if I have my green, and then let's say it's like maybe a leaf or something, and then maybe I've got kind of like some darker areas. Oh, that's the same kind of green. I can do this. If I have some maybe lighter areas in there, I can kind of put some lighter values in there, and maybe I have kind of like a dark section in the lighter area, and maybe I've got some light over here. So that's 2 values. So there's some things that are kind of going on there that are kind of interesting. And then maybe I jump in, and maybe I want to use the yellow for the sort of the really light highlights. Maybe I can kind of come in here and do some little highlights and stuff. Now, as you use this, really press hard. Don't be shy. If you just do a little bit, it's not going to blend. And if I kind of do a little bit here and I try to blend that, it's not going to go anywhere. But really feel free to like shove, and then when we start coming in with the blending tools, then I can kind of finesse it in there. I can kind of, blend that around. So it's not quite as hard of an edge there. Sort of blend this. It almost starts looking kind of like a bell pepper. Okay, maybe I'll blend that out a little bit. I'm just kind of dragging the material out. And normally I would say if you've got a lot of extra little bits of pastel on there, to blow on it, of course we've got our masks on, so we kind of have to take it and gently take it off the table and just shake it gently, and then we can kind of put it back on. Okay, so sort of rules of 3s, and I can actually kind of make that even more so. Like if I find some browns, let's do this. What color is that? There we go. There's some sort of browns. and got a black. All right, so if I have maybe like a vase or something, vase shape, so like how I'm using sort of the side of the pastel, really getting a lot of that on there. And when you draw your objects, and I'll talk about this as you kind of go to my little vase, you want to make sure that it's not so far zoomed out where you have all your objects in the middle and it's so tiny that you're going to have to really try to get in there. It's going to be way too difficult. So we really want to sort of zoom in when we take our photo so that they're not totally out of there. So I'm going to say my light source is kind of hitting down from this direction. So we're going to say it's going like that. Boop. There we go. Okay, so that way I know my lights are going to be here. So I'm going to use this as my highlight, and my dark values are going to be this way. So I could just kind of bring some dark there. Whoops. Got a little bit crazy with it over there. And then maybe that's going to be a little bit like this, kind of like so. And then I can bring in the really dark value. Right there. Kind of put that inside a little bit. Okay. And then with my highlight, so I've got 1, 2, 3 already, because I've already used these 3. Right? So now I can come in with my highlights and I can say, okay, well, I see a highlight thing here. There's one a little bit here. There's one kind of on the lip there. Kind of maybe it comes out down around like so. And so that's starting to take shape pretty well there. And then maybe there's some like shadow being thrown kind of off over here or something that I could deal with on the fabric. Okay. But I haven't really done any blending. And again, really press hard, you know. These things are really thick. These ones, when we start on these, with these ones, they'll probably be fairly long, so you'll break them, which is fine. I mean, I usually snap them in half anyway. Makes it a little bit harder to put them back into the cardboard case there. But, you know, now I could come in with my blending stick, get that green off of there, see what happens if you don't clean it. I'll go ahead and clean mine really quickly. There we go. And you can shake that dust off too. And you know, maybe I want to just kind of wiggle around a little bit. And so we're really looking for just painting sort of with the pastels. Because it's okay if we're not, you know, if it doesn't get totally super smooth. And I'm just going to sort of dust that off and dump it upside down. There we go. Okay, but that's okay. So now if you get too dark, I mean, like if I went and got too dark over here and was like, oh no, I messed up, I can just put it right back on top again. Okay, so we can just keep layering this. Oh, I need to bring that out a little bit more. I'm gonna blend it back in. Just wiggle it a little bit. You know, it's just, I'm not doing much, just a little bit. And it's really blending like quite a bit. Again, I can kind of shake it off over here. Okay. And that's pretty much how we are going to be working with the pastels. And so, you know, you try to find the color that matches the object that you have. Do the best you can. You know, if you've got greens that are kind of in this range, and that's kind of all we have to work with, I mean, you can get kind of really creative and you could, you know, do this and you can maybe add a little bit of this on top of it, and then maybe this looks pretty good, and then maybe I'm coming back in here with a brown and making it a little bit sort of dirty, and then my green ends up being kind of like that. You know, we can create our own colors to a point, but if you're doing that, you really have to layer these things on like a lot in order to make the colors blend. Okay. But again, we're just pulling in little bits. Gotta clean that off again. To just blend it in just little bits. Because anytime you look at a drawing or a piece of artwork, you're going to be, you know, at least 6-8 feet away. You're not going to just go right up really super close to it. you know, unless you want to see sort of like the mark making details, but you're going to sort of see this from far away, and it's going to be much more clear and much more sort of chunky as you go on. But you can sort of see how big my little mini vase is that is on my paper. You know, that's pretty good. If you have pieces going off the edges, that's sort of even better to really sort of zoom in, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in class in terms of zooming.